This Mother's Day, show Mom just how much you appreciate her love and support with 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can get 36 sorbet roses for just $36. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click the radio icon, and enter code Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY-ESPN is always the number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Will Cain, host of the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio each weekday afternoon, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If I recall correctly. He's also a contributor to First Take. Most weekday mornings he comes on the show. Occasionally he hosts in place of Molly Kiram, who's going to be out for this week. I think he does an outstanding job for us. And even though I disagree with him most of the time, he always makes sense as far as I'm concerned. And to be quite honest with you, I think he asks very, very legitimate questions. And I think that needs to be said here. So even though I disagree, I want to emphasize to the folks out there that I found nothing offensive about what he asked. I thought it was very, very clear, and I thought it was very, very fair on his part to ask the question that he asked. Where do we draw the line? You know, when you want to just wash away stuff and act like it's not a part of history, that it never existed or whatever, where do you draw the line? If Kate Smith's statue can be covered and ultimately removed, and her renditions are no longer played at Flyers games, Yankees games, or anywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, why is George Washington still on Mount Rushmore? He was a slave owner. And ultimately, he rose above his time, okay? And he freed his slaves, while Thomas Jefferson did not. But he was a slave owner. Benjamin Franklin, as Will Cain pointed out, slave owner. If you want to get a little bit political, former Senator Robert Byrd, who passed away years ago, out of West Virginia, was a former recruiter and member of the Ku Klux Klan. If we want to really, really get real with it, Lyndon B. Johnson was repeatedly caught using the N-word. Matter of fact, he used the N-word to talk about the first African-American that he was going to put on the Supreme Court in Thurgood Marshall. And anybody with sense that knows a scintilla of history in regards to politics knows about that famous quote he allegedly articulated when he talked about locking up the black vote for the next 50 years if he were to pass civil rights legislation in the law, which he ultimately did. Wasn't the most honorable intention in the world, but it was factual, because I'll be damned if the Democratic vote hadn't been locked up since that time. So when Will Cain asked a question like that, I gave the only answer, the non-historian that I am. Know some history. I read. I try to edify myself. I try to have some scintilla, some speck of intelligence to me. But the bottom line is, I'm not a historian. I don't know deeply and factually and intimately some of the details of our history the way some of the respected individuals I admire from my community may know. I encourage you to go listen to Joe Madison on Sirius XM Urban View Radio, 6 to 10 every weekday morning. Go listen to him. I encourage you to listen to Karen Hunter, 3 to 6 p.m. on Sirius XM Urban View Channel. I encourage you to listen to the Dr. Michael Eric Dysons, the Mark Lamont Hills, the Mark Thompsons of the world, and others. I encourage you to listen to those people because they know more than me. And oh, by the way, those are folks on the liberal side. If there's black Republicans or if there are black Republicans on the right, go listen to them too. Get it all and deduce what you deduce from history. That's not my lane. And I'm not going there. All I'm trying to say is that, look, a person like Will Cain, who is white, from Texas, highly intelligent, a lawyer by profession, and incredibly fair-minded, I might add, although I disagree with him most times, asked a fair question. And I'm not going to knock him for that. I'm going to tell you that this is my answer. The offended party matters. If you are a member of a disenfranchised community and you find the rendition of God Bless America by Kate Smith highly offensive, particularly after learning of some racist lyrics, courtesy of songs that she's put out, and you believe that statue should be removed, it should be removed. Period. Now, I don't know what that means you do with Lyndon B. Johnson, who doesn't have a statue. He does have a Memorial Grove on the Potomac, if I remember correctly. I don't know if that means if George Washington should be removed from Mount Rushmore. Even though he freed slaves, he owned them. I don't know what you should do with the name of Thomas Jefferson, who refused to free slaves. I don't know. Not my lane. But I do know this. When the Jewish community is affected by something, they don't allow anybody outside of the Jewish community to tell them what they should be offended by. And they don't allow anybody to gauge what should be their standard. They do it. I do know that when it comes to the Catholic Church, particularly as it comes to priests and some of their alleged behaviors, I do know the Catholic community, which exceeds billions, have religiously stated, no pun intended, have stated, quote, "We will judge, not you." And in the case of priests, we were talking about whether or not we were talking about lawlessness and criminality, and still people was like, "We shall judge." So my point is, if other communities in this nation get to judge and gauge how they're supposed to feel and how they should react, if other people, if other groups of people, if other ethnic groups, if other religious groups, whatever you want to call them, if they get to decide the level of offense they feel towards something on a case-by-case basis, and therefore allowed to judge accordingly and make decisions, why can't the black community? That's all I'm saying. I'm not judging here, there, or there. I'm simply saying, if black folks in America feel this way at this particular moment in time about Kate Smith, then that's how they feel. She passed away in 1986. Family members of hers and beyond, I can understand the sensitivity towards her potentially being excoriated more than 30 years after her death. I understand that. But the bottom line is, if you are the offended party and that is how you feel, then that is how you feel. Because in our society, we've seen too many examples of various communities within our nation rising up and defining for us what we should be offended by just because they were offended by it. And if they can do that, why can't black folk? Why can't black folk? That's all I ask. That's all I ask. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. I want to thank Will Kane for bringing up that question, because I think it's a question all of us can participate in answering, but none more so than black people ourselves. I think it's a very, very fair question by Will Kane. And the one thing we shouldn't do is be offended by the question he asked. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, if you missed my opening segment, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by the Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, and